All right, everyone, a very, very, very good evening to each and every one of you out here. Right now, it is 5 o'clock England Standard Time and 3:30 p.m. Dubai Standard Time. I hope you all had a great day, right? Today being the 31st of October, being the last day of the month, and it's been quite interesting even in terms of the Indian share market when there were some volatility expected in terms of market movements, especially with certain financial derivatives such as options and futures, with their expiry dates taking place today. There has been quite a lot of fluctuations. All right, so Sophia is in the house. Hello, Sophia. I hope you had a great evening, a great day, sorry, and I hope you have a great evening as well. All right, so I hope everyone has, entered into our live streaming session. We want to make sure that as many people can be a part of this community because the more the merrier, correct? So before getting started, make sure whatever is required for you to be attentive, to focus for the next 1 hour, right? We are going to talk a lot about the U.S. elections. It's right around the corner, right? It's on the fifth. It's on the 5th of November. So in 1, 2, 3, in almost 2 to 3 working days, right? We would be having huge fluctuations in the market, at least on in terms of the US indices and the dollar, and how we would be anticipating or looking for how can it affect whether positively or adversely in the Indian share market and on certain sectors. So we are going to talk a lot about it. So I hope everyone is ready with a pen, paper, coffee, water, tea, whatever is required to keep you focused. All right, a quick point to highlight before we move on for people who are like Harsh, you good in English but we don't understand much English. So आप सभी के लिए जिनको इंग्लिश की कमी है या जिनको इंग्लिश अच्छी तरह से समझ में नहीं आती है, उन सभी के लिए अगर आप चाहते हो कि मैं हिंदी में भी बात करूं तो मैं कर सकता हूं, पर आपको उसके लिए कमेंट बॉक्स में आपको लिखना पड़ेगा कि यस हर्ष आप प्लीज हिंदी में बात कीजिए, या फॉर पीपल हु वांट मी टू टॉक इन इंग्लिश I will be talking in English majorly, so they can press 1 in the chat box. So I have an awareness as how many people want me to talk in English, and बाकी लोगों के लिए जिनको लगता है कि आपकी इंग्लिश कमजोर है पर आप हिंदी में सुनना चाहते हैं, तो मैं हिंदी में भी अच्छी तरह से बात कर सकता हूँ. मैं मुंबई का हूँ, तो आप प्लीज कमेंट बॉक्स में 2 लिखिए सो दैट आपको भी आप मुझे बता पाओगे कि हाँ कितने लोग इंग्लिश में सुनना चाहते हैं और कितने लोग हिंदी में, तो उसके हिसाब से मैं एडजस्ट कर पाऊंगा ना, फिर मैं सभी को ध्यान दे पाऊंगा. इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर मी टू मेक श्योर दैट द एंटायर कम्युनिटी एज अ होल can understand and follow what I am saying, right? I'm not just talking to 1 or 2 people out here. I'm going to talk to a lot of people, as in how more people are going to get connected with us. We are, assured that a lot of people have started to show interest in our capabilities, in our, prowess, in our potential to prove and generate good amount of profitability. So we would be having a lot of interest coming from a lot of clients and customers from India with different backgrounds. So I hope people understand that with each background they have their own set of positives and negatives, right? So for people who are like we don't understand much English, no problem, I can talk in Hindi. मैं हिंदी में भी बात कर सकता हूँ. आप प्लीज बस कमेंट बॉक्स में लिखिए so that मुझे पता चल जाएगा. All right, I hope we have sorted out with the main query that was concerning a lot of our beautiful viewers. So quickly giving a quick introduction about myself. I am the one and only Harsh. I have 8 years of experience trading the financial markets. I mainly focus on trading the forex markets as well as the gold, silver and other commodity markets as well as the US indices, correct? We have the S&P 500, Dow Jones 30 and so on. We currently are even looking at the Indian share market in terms of what is, what are the indices showing, what is the Nifty and the Sensex showing, as well as what are the individual stocks, showcasing to look for tradable opportunities, correct? We at Dolphin Markets are here to provide you with the best services possible. We provide you with analysis. We provide you with trading opportunities, aka called as hot stocks. We even provide you with trading education, correct? So we have, live streaming sessions all across the week, working week, right? All the way from Monday till Friday, correct? So based on all the 5 days, I make sure to prioritize three live trading sessions, live streaming sessions. The one that happens in the morning, the second one that happens just around an hour before the market closes, and the third current live streaming session that happens once the market is closed. And that's the time we try to focus more on education, providing you with valuable education. But since we have the US elections around the corner, we are going to keep the education part aside for now and try to focus on what the US elections are, signifying in terms of who has the greater potential to win, and if, whether Mrs. Kamala Harris wins or Mr. Donald Trump wins, what are the implications that will take place in the share market. All right, so and on the individual stocks. So let's get started quickly. I hope everyone is ready and we are good to go. All right, please understand that our entire crux of, providing you with these live trading sessions are to showcase our credibility when the markets are running. I know the markets are closed, but very important to, showcase our credibility that yes, we have been proving ourselves consistently almost for the last month and a half, not on one, not on two trades, but on almost 27 trades, right? At the same time, we also make sure to, inform you that we also have trades running, and based on that, we try to provide our best analysis as to how to mitigate risk, because the market does what it has to do, correct? We are providing you with detailed analysis, but at the same time, we are also, give me a minute, we are also trying to showcase that yes, the markets do get, so uncertain at times. Remember, there's a lot of, pessimism, uncertainty right now in the current market. So we are trying our best, we're providing you with hot stock opportunities, but at the same time, it is also of vital importance to understand that if the market is going against our favor because of certain scenarios right around us, do not fear. We are, going to provide you with updates as to what has to happen, how to trade, what precautions to take, how to add, how to mitigate risk by taking positions and making money. All right, so I hope you're done with that. I hope you get an overall understanding of what it is. Now let's start with what today's topic is all about, right? So the US election, as you can see, as per today's title, I heard that the US election is beneficial to this sector. Which sector are we talking about? You will, start to find out, correct? So based on this current article that you can see, we have two, we have the top contenders, right? When it comes to, the US election, we have Mrs. Kamala Harris on the left and Mr. Donald Trump on the right, right? Mrs. Kamala Harris is from which party? Mr. Donald Trump is from the Republican Party, while Kamala Harris is from the Democratic Party. All right. Each party has their own ideologies of which they are following, and they come with their own set of, positive points as well as some setbacks or negative points, right? No one is perfect in this world, correct? Everyone has good points and everyone has bad points. Now how as a trader, how as we as an economy, correct, can analyze and try to find out how the market conditions can formulate based on who might win, and how what is the trajectory of certain influences that the US elections can have on the Indian share market, and especially on certain sectors that are highly influenced by the US elections. Why? Because the US elections are for the US citizens, and certain sectors in India are highly dependent on the consumption of their products and goods from Americans, from the US citizens. So that is the reason, correct? As you can see right now, it is the 60th, all right, quadrennial presidential election that will be held on November 5th. So I'm pretty much sure that every one of you is aware by now that the elections are happening on 5th of November, right? And it is a closely contested. Remember, both Mrs. Kamala Harris and Mr. Donald Trump are fighting neck to neck. So there is a lot of competition. It's not one party leading the other party by a big margin. There is hardly any gap, between the two in terms of who is winning and who is losing. So there is a lot of anticipation as to who has, higher chances of, winning out. All right. Sophia is asking, do you favor to take office in terms of its impact? Do you Who do you favor to take office in terms of its impact on the stock market? Well, Sophia, that is the biggest question, right? But everyone has their opinions, and I have to. But I want to, try to make you understand from by trying to connect as many dots as possible. There is not one favorite, candidate that I would want to suggest, because with that favorite candidate has its own repercussions, right? Its own setbacks. But do not worry, we will get into the topic and try to analyze. And it's not about me, but it's about us, right? You, me, and the people in this community as to who would be overall favorable, for the Indian economy as a whole, right? So do not worry, Sophia, we would be talking about it. But please be aware that, the polls are happening, they are having their, sessions all across the country, making sure that the campaigns are running well, and they're trying to, get people as updated as possible in terms of whom they should elect as the next president of the United States of America. Sophia also writes, recently the news has been dominated by reports about Trump, especially in relation to the stock market. Like I was saying, Sophia, the competition is so cutthroat in terms of who's winning and who is leading and who's lagging, that now becomes so it's neck to neck competition. So yes, Trump has always been in news for being pro American always. So he has had an anti socialistic, anti communalistic behavior towards other countries. And yes, it has affected the stock market in the past, because Trump has been elected once in the past, right, in the year 2016. So we are going to talk more about it. Do these news reports indicate that the public favors Trump? Not exactly, Sophia. You are running a little ahead. Do not worry. We are trying to connect the dots as to which party favors which sectors in the Indian economy, and then based on that, we will try to connect as many dots as possible, right? These articles do not favor anyone in terms of who is winning. All they're trying to do is they're trying to indicate which party or which candidate has a stronger influence on which sector in the Indian stock market. All right. So let's get started in terms of this graph, which is very vital. All right. So in terms of the sector, all right. So these are the sectors, and these sectors belong to the overall sectors in that country, right? So if a Democratic Party wins, these are the positive and the negative impacts that can have for these certain services, sectors, all right? And if a Republican Party wins, then these are the positive and negative setbacks for that particular sector. Now, please understand, if the Democratic Party wins, right, Democratic Party is being led by Mrs. Kamala Harris, and the Republican Party is being led by Mr. Donald Trump, correct? So in terms of IT services, right, the Democratic win will have a negative impact. Why? Because as I had mentioned yesterday, the Democratic Party is more towards uplifting or easing out the rigidity. It wants to make it more flexible, more convenient for the middle class American citizens, by reducing the grocery rates, by reducing mortgage rates, by providing more sustenance to the economy. Republican Party are more business focused, right? All they care is how businesses in America can become better compared to the other world. In terms of IT services, they have a negative impact, while the Republican Party has a positive impact. Pharma, plus or minus, has a positive impact based on the Democratic win, but neutral towards Republican, so on and so forth. But the most important piece of information from this particular graph remains always on the IT sector, right? Remember, the IT sectors are still expected to see negative impact on margins due to higher onshoring. Now, remember, people when Trump was in power, he was strictly against, he was anti-social, when people come from abroad to work, right? So immigrants who come from abroad to work in America, he did not, favor immigrants, and he had, come out or established strict policies against immigration, right? So that is the reason why certain countries who, depend a lot on American consumption, consumption by the American citizens, were having a hard time, based on that. In terms of pharmaceuticals, as you can see, both the parties, the Democratic and Republican parties, are basically would, plan to reduce prescription, the cost of medicines, the cost of drugs that are required. The Republican Party, wants to see an increase in competition in the generic business, as well as the Democratic Party is aiming for faster approval. So overall, they still have a positive outlook for the pharma sector. The oil and the gas sector. Now, this is the second, you know, point which is to be taken into factor, to be taken into consideration. The Trump administration may be a supporter of traditional gas. Trump is, a pro supporter of coal and gas, conventional forms of energy. When it comes to renewable forms of energy, it's Mrs. Kamala Harris who's trying to, push forward the usage and, policies based on more consumption of renewable energies, right? So like it's mentioned, Kamala Harris is against, the focus. Basically, she wants to focus more on climate and emissions, as against Trump's, vision of, still depending on fossil fuels, right? Then metals, as such, also are largely to be neutral, not to be affected much. Industrials also, defense would be an interesting area because. Defense is a very important sector, right, for any economy, especially for an economy such as India as well as USA. So they are trying to focus on, defense sector in terms of, ensuring America's military is the strongest and well equipped. But they want to tie up with India to, to foster the relationships of both the countries. Remember, textiles also. Textiles, the another point in the textile industry is that Trump's administration has already, imposed certain trade barriers, right, with China. Now, with Trump and with Kamala Harris having a little, they're not retaliating, but with the impact that China has in the overall global markets, the USA is trying to, still make its foot larger in the economy in terms of restricting the flow of Chinese goods and services into USA by increasing the trade barriers, by, increasing the tariffs. I remember there was an article that showed US has planned to increase the trade tariffs by 60%, right? While it is only 10% for the other countries. So that in a way benefits India, because now the Indian textile players, right, have, more power in terms of, providing their goods and products and services to the USA. So this has been a little, basic understanding in terms of which sector has, an upper hand when it comes to whether the Democratic Party wins, and which sector would have an upper hand if the Republican Party comes into, power. There's another site which has a lot of graphs and very interesting data to showcase with you, to try to make you understand, by connecting more dots, as many dots as possible, correct? So the impact of Trump versus Harris on the Indian economy, right? Sectors and stock markets. First and foremost, yeah, everyone, because of the speculation going around with the economic uncertainty going around, there is still a lot of uncertainty in the markets, whether whoever wins, whether Mrs. Harris wins or Mr. Trump wins. But right now, the gold has been at an all time record high, right, of almost around $2,800, correct? This has been happening with the uncertainties going around where people are still not sure which side, the markets are, or, are planning to travel to, right? Are expected to go towards. Now, in terms of, there was a graph which I wanted to show, and that was, these all graphs are mentioning about, the US GDP. Right now, we want to focus more from an Indian sector point of view. So, talking about the US GDP right now does not make much sense. Yes, this is an important point that I wanted to cover, the US equity market performance versus India's Nifty. You have to understand, and I guess yesterday I had shown you practically by going onto the charts and drawing vertical lines, the because we want to compare two elections, right? The election where the Republican Party had won, and the second session when the Democratic Party under Mr. Biden, right, who's currently the United States of America's president, correct? So, the first election phase of 2020 and the second election phase of 2016, all right? So, during that time, as you can see, the impact that the elections had on the S&P as well as the Nifty index, right? We are talking about the graph on the left. During Trump's, tenure, initially the markets were bullish, but with certain trade restrictions, imposition of certain tariffs and embargoes, and trying to just constrict the world economy by just focusing purely on American and its own local businesses, we had a fall in the Nifty 500. But during Biden's time, we did have a correction, but overall, the movement of the Nifty index had been bullish, correct? I hope people are able to understand. So now when Sophia asks, do you favor whom do you favor to take office in terms of its impact on the stock market? Sophia, I think you have got a slight understanding as to which direction I am pointing to. But nonetheless, remember the markets are always changing, right? Just because a particular candidate wins does not guarantee that the market conditions will always be that particular way as well. Remember, the markets change. Every candidate's, method of analyzing and deciding how the market sectors are performing can be changing as well. So just because the during the Democratic Party rule, the prices of the Nifty were escalating, and during the tenure when Trump was in charge, the prices were deteriorating. Will that always be the case when someone wins? Not at all, right? The markets can change. The markets are adapting always. Let's look at the other important key differences, because in terms of what might be the key differences whether Mrs. Kamala Harris wins or Mr. Donald Trump wins based on certain factors such as, first of all, economy and taxes. Under Harris, we are focusing on reducing food costs, offering incentives. This is what I discussed yesterday, right? Working towards uplifting the standard of living, right, for the citizens of USA. So they plan to raise corporate tax. So they want to uplift the overall consensus of US citizens, and they also want to raise corporate tax. This is the vision of the Democratic Party, right? While the Republicans are proposing to reduce corporate taxes, the opposite, right? To make businesses flourish in the United States, to encourage business investments, and are focusing on controlling inflation. Trump is also likely to challenge Fed's independence, so there are many points as in terms of this. Sophia is writing, I see news about Trump every day. I mean, Trump has a lot of power, right? He is a billionaire. I hope people know that Trump is not just running for presidency, but he has a successful business, a very successful empire. So with such an empire comes a lot of influence as well, right? So the reason why I'm seeing a lot of news about Trump is because he is getting that attention, or he has the power of media to showcase more of him in the limelight. All right. But one point to keep in mind is that both parties are aligned with the need to restrict trade with China, right? As I mentioned, with China's over dominance in the global markets, right? So US is taking a hit, and based on that, they are increasing tariffs, right? Imposing tariffs on imports, and that is where India could have a little bit of advantage. Then we talked about energy and defense. So in terms of energy, Democrats are emphasizing on clean energy, as I had mentioned to you, correct? Promoting electric vehicles and renewable energy products. But Republicans, on the other hand, are still prioritizing traditional, like the coal, oil, and gas sector. Defense parties, both of them want to expand the defense sectors, immigration and onshoring, so on and so forth. So we had a little basic understanding in terms of what. But when it comes to the IT sector, we keep repeating about the IT sector because the IT sector is the most influenced sector in the Indian share market that is connected to the US sector. So anything that US markets, so anything that happens in the US elections will variably affect the US markets, and if something affects the US markets, the IT sector of the Indian stock market will also be affected, correct? Because Indian IT firms could see challenges under the Trump administration due to his anti-immigration stance. Like I had mentioned, he has an anti-immigration stance. He wants the locals to prosper rather than the immigrants coming from abroad to work in the country. But based on that, the companies have already started to adapt to minimize reliance on the US visa. We will be talking about that. We will be even looking at certain charts to analyze. We would even go through our watch lists. I know the markets are closed, but to get an understanding as to how things are being connected, right? So these were certain points that we have been talking, and it's quite interesting, when it comes to analyzing and trying to find, what would be better. Now let us look at some of the final thoughts of this particular article, right? The final thoughts on Trump versus Harris presidency on the Indian economy. Harris's presidency would mean continuity and stability in the US India relations, right? As of now, the Democratic Party is ruling. If Mrs. Harris comes into power, the trajectory will be plus or minus similar because both of them are from the same party. But we also see in terms of Trump, right? There might be fluctuation because with Trump comes a new party, comes another party, the Republican Party, which has its own philosophies and policies that it plans to act upon, correct? So that is when we are going to be having quite a lot of movements. I hope people are able to understand and we are able to connect the dots. Now, when it comes to how the Sensex performed when the US elections had been, had been had been carried out, correct? We are bothered only on the last two. I hope people are, you don't have to look at 2024 because it's going to happen. We mainly want to have a good analysis based on what happened in the year 2016 when Trump was in power and what happened in 2020 when Mr. Biden, who is from the same party as Mrs. Kamala Harris, is, contesting from the Democratic Party. So, what were the changes in Sensex at that time compared to, the changes that had taken place when Trump was in power? As you can see, let us just focus on the 1 month before, 1 week before, 1 week after, and 1 month after. So, a short term perspective as to what happened within a week before and after, and what happened 1 month. So, a little bigger term picture, right? As you can see, in 2016, the value of Sensex was at 27,866 before the elections. And 1 month after, it fell drastically. So there was a deteriorating effect on the share market when Trump was elected as the president. While in 2020, as you can see, the value was at 38,000. It rose to 47,000. That showcases that when the Democratic Party came into power, when Mr. Biden at that time was elected as the president of USA, the Sensex had risen, all right, I hope you can see, even in terms of 1 week, going back to 2016, when you're looking at 1 week before the elections, the price was at 27,877. And after Trump was elected in 2016, the prices fell down to 26,000, right? So there was a negative impact. Similarly, 1 week before Mr. Biden was elected, right, from the Democratic Party, the value was at 40, and after he got elected, the value shot up. The value of the Sensex had risen, right, by from 40 to 43,000. So that shows that when Sophia has been asking whom do you favor in terms of its impact on the stock market, Sophia, I think you know what the answer is, correct? We do have a bias towards the Democratic Party because with the Democratic Party coming into power and with its policies and philosophies matching with that of the Indian stock market, my preference would be Mrs. Kamala Harris, right? Because she was more pro-Indian and uh, her policies, her philosophies, resonate with what we want, right? How we want the Indian stock market to perform. Because on these values, we have seen that yes, who has done a better job when they were elected, right? What was the impact on the index once when Trump was elected and when Mr. Biden was elected? We are not just talking about two candidates, but we are talking of two parties, right? When the Republican Party was elected, it had a negative impact on the Sensex. When the Democratic Party was elected, we had a positive impact on the Sensex. I hope people are able to understand. So, Sophia, thank you. Have some water, please. Thank you very much. It's very interesting to connect, these dots and understand in terms of how by going through articles, because come on, these events take place once in 4 years. So but since US is currently the superpower or the country that is to be looked upon, that is the reason we have to be cautious as well as be aware that yes, what are the positive aspects, what are the negative aspects, how can we connect as many dots as possible to get a better understanding, so that we can make better judgments, correct? Now in terms of how when Donald Trump and Mrs. Hillary Clinton had come, so the values are the same. This is just a graphical, representation that yes, the prices were having a negative impact on Sensex when Trump was elected, and vice versa when Mr. Biden was elected, right? When Mr. Trump and Biden were, contesting for the elections, and once Mr. Biden had won, that is when the prices had appreciated in value. Now, in terms of, there was another article that I wanted to show you, but please bear in mind, overall, when we still look at the index, the Indian stock market, still, with a lot of bearishness coming into the market, the price has come into a category or into the mood, or what we call it as being extremely fearful, right? Uncertainty, prices are still bearish, FIIs are still pulling out a lot of funds from the economy, and with Diwali running, people are, if not ready to enter, they have taken a step back to enjoy the festival with their family and friends. Remember, guys and girls, men and beautiful women, today is the 31st of October. Today is Diwali, the festival of lights. To all those people who are attending this particular live streaming session, I wish you and your family members a very, very happy Diwali. I hope you have a wonderful and prosperous, year ahead. So, coming back to the in terms of sector analysis, as we had even discussed early on during the day, when it came to how the sectors are currently performing, and then we even looked at the sectors from in terms of the software and IT sectors. Now the software and IT sectors apparently has been taking a downfall, as in terms of 1 minute. Yeah, so the software and IT sector, as you can see, my mouse has been at a deficit of negative 2.4, right? When we come back to trading view to showcase, if we are talking about the software and IT sector, let us start by looking at the Nifty IT index, right? So the Nifty IT index is basically again an index of the top 10 IT performing companies, right? From there, we will start to get a gist as to what the markets are doing and how the markets might react. Like I had always mentioned, the market is already starting to take into consideration who might win or who might not win. But nonetheless, since it's elections and everything is kept to the last moment, there might be numbers or polls showing that Mrs. Harris is leading the polls by 1%, but 1% is very short lived. Anything can happen till the last minute. All right, but nonetheless, we had talked a lot about this. When if Trump wins, what will happen? What is the general context of happening? And if Harris wins, what? Because Trump is anti, in terms of his immigration policies, he wants to make sure that the people of America are first prioritized in terms of businesses. Only then we can, look upon, the other countries and their businesses. So he wants to let the citizens of America and its businesses flourish. Those are his prior interests. All right. But Harris, on the other side, she wants, to develop better relationships with other countries who are performing well, to have, better stability, better strategic, alliances with other countries, especially with India. So this is generally going to be the consensus. Now, if you're looking at, our watch list, yes, I know the markets are closed, but, currently we do not have any watch list which falls into the IT sector. So right as of now, we do not have to worry about in terms of how will the market affect our hot stocks, our portfolio of hot stocks, because our trades are either in oil, either in process industries, either in consumer products, either in finance, right? Or either in manufacturing. We do not have any trade, any hot stock as of now, which is dealing with the IT sector. So we are still fine. We have trades which are not dealing in the information technology sector, right? We have a trade running in the telecommunication sector, and that would be Evantel. I hope, Sophia, if you have been able to capitalize on this, or we might let it run because tomorrow is again Friday, the last day of the week, and we do expect some positive movement in the price, right? Now, please bear in mind that certain companies like TCS, Infosys, especially with Infosys, what has Infosys done? I hope all of you are aware about Infosys, right? Infosys is one of those companies which have been, in the limelight. Apparently, a very strong company in terms of fundamentals, right? $1 billion company, and it falls in the information technology services. Now, with a strong fall in price, either the price has already started to take into consideration of what might be the impacts of Mr. Trump overpowering Mrs. Kamala Harris, but nonetheless, there has been a strong downfall, even in terms of, but its news and its quarterly earnings have not stayed up to the mark. So they have been some of the major reasons why there has been a downfall. When we look at another company such as Tata Consultancy, remember, we are trying to focus on companies that are listed on the IT, who are not listed, but they come under the IT sector, the information technology sector. So that is the entire point, like as to who has the upper hand, whether Mr. Trump or Mrs. Harris. As you can see, we have already denoted it, with our colorful projections. And as of now, the market has started to take into consideration. Can it flip? Of course, they can. Remember, the markets are subjective, right? They are not objective. They are subjected based on the opinions and judgment of traders and investors, right? So we just want to make sure we are able to connect as many dots as possible. We talked about the IT sector. What about the defense sector? So we have a company called as Bharat, right? Bharat Dynamics, right? BDL. Now, this particular company is based in the defense sector, right? Now, defense sector is one sector that has, um, a positive impact in terms of whether whether Mrs. Harris wins or whether Mr. Trump wins. The strategic relationship between USA and India is is kind of lies on the foundation of the defense sector, because both the countries always have always prioritized in terms of making sure that the defense sector has been to its uh, to its best phase in terms of saying. So looking at it, even from a technical perspective, the prices have been going up, the prices have been correcting. Maybe with Trump or Kamala Harris coming in, the general consensus for this particular sector is bullish. Whether it is Trump or Harris, remember there are certain sectors which are highly influenced. There are some sectors which are not influenced, and there are some sectors which have a neutral influence. So this is one company or one sector, which is the defense sector, right? So let me just write it down: defense sector, right? It's a company in the defense sector, all right? And whether it is Mr. Trump or Mrs. Harris, the general projection for this sector is bullish as of now. Coming to the next sector in terms of give me a minute. Yeah, because it's very important to understand. Let me take you back to that page which had showcased the the graph. The defense sector is almost either neutral or positive. There is no negative when it comes to the defense sector. As for textile as well, let me check what textile has to offer. Can we, find out something more about the textile industry in relationship to who might win and what could the implications be, right? Let us go back and see. Is anyone aware that do we have a textile index? I'm not too sure. Let me type and see Nifty, because even I'm not an avid follower of textile companies, but nonetheless we want to see if there is possibility of something. No, there is no textile index, at least on the Nifty, on the Indian markets. But nonetheless, let's type and see if there is good textile companies out there which we can just, look at it and try to understand. In terms of textile, apparently, the current consensus has been, bullish. Why? Because based on the article mentioned, in terms of the article that has been shown, textiles also do not have much of an influence. Either they have a neutral influence or they have a positive. They do not have a negative. Sophia is writing what sector is this? Sophia, the current sector which is mentioned on TradingView as of now is the textile. The sector pertaining to the manufacturing of clothes, clothing lines, textile sector, right? People need to wear clothes, right? So I mean, how can this sector, yes, the sector can have its ups and downs, but overall this sector looks at manufacturing of clothings and apparels. Yeah, utilities have a positive impact, a positive aspect and a negative. So mainly it comes on to the defense, textile, as well as industrial, but in terms of industrial we would have to read a little bit more. So let me go back to the page and showcase you. I hope people can see the graph, right? So it is industrial, defense and textile, which either have a neutral aspect or a positive. They do not have a negative aspect, at least based on this current article, correct? So let us find out a little bit of more information in the industrial aspect, right? Oh, sorry, the industrial sector. Donald Trump's focus is to make USA a global manufacturing superpower, which may be beneficial for multinational companies, right? Like ABB. Remember, these are companies of USA, right? Um, which are in the process of becoming important partners in the value chain of their parent companies having a dominant presence. So since the parent companies are in US, the companies which have their branches, right, a subsidiary of the company in India, will also be having positive impacts, right? So ABV, Siemens, Cummins, Honeywell, all these are companies which are established in India as well, right? And that might be beneficial for them, correct? So based on Donald Trump's inclination, the chances for these industrial companies, let's try to see if we can get some more information on this. Let me find out a stock that we can try to compare on. One second. All right, let's talk about this particular stock, right? Cummins India. In terms of this is again, like I had shown you, it's an industrial. It comes under the industrial sector. It is into auto parts. All right, so Cummins right now, as you can see, even for the last couple of days, remember, as and how the elections are coming closer, there is going to be more fluctuation, right, in terms of movement or sentiment of traders, right? Cummins also has been one of those companies which has, been quite well established, but still not in terms of movement. The last couple of days has been bullish, right? It's very similar to the textile sector, if you would have noticed, right? The stock that I put in previously before this. So people, you try to understand. We're just trying to analyze and connect as many dots as possible. The more dots we are able to connect, the better. But based on a good amount of research and a good amount of analysis, I have come to the point where it is really the IT sector, which would be highly influenced by the US elections. And coming back to the same chart, to show you again. And because we're not talking about one company, we are going to talk about the entire sector. And which sector better than the Nifty IT index, right? So please bear in mind, with the current sentiment of price falling down, the consensus, right? Because Trump coming with his own policies in terms of tariffs, in terms of trade restrictions, while Harris, on the other hand, trying to uplift more possibilities for inter-country business relationships, correct? Relationships, strategic business relationships between India and United States of America. So based on the current movement of price, with the uncertainty coming in, especially with when Sophia had written that I see news about Trump every day. Such news articles impact the stock market too, right, Sophia? I mean, if you read articles, people read articles and then they form judgments, and those judgments are then carried out in the form of trades as well. And that is how the general consensus makes price move. So you were correct, Sophia. When you see a lot about Trump, the general consensus arises that Trump is winning. Now whether he is winning or not winning, that is completely not even applicable, because there's nothing sure until the polls are completed and the results are out of the elections. So till that time, whether Harris is winning, whether Trump is winning, is still skeptical. But the overall consensus, right, especially with the last graphical representation of what the Nifty was showing, right, sorry, what the Sensex was showing, it's very very important to understand that it has happened in the past, and the chances for it to happen in the future will be also significant, right? The way I had shown you how Nifty index was affected when Trump was in power, and how the Nifty index was impacted or affected, sorry, when the Democratic Party under Mr. Joe Biden had been, how the market had been affected when Mr. Biden was in power, right? When the Democratic Party was in power. So people have a positive consensus for none other than the Democratic Party. From an England share market point of view, we do have a bias. We are slightly partial towards the Democratic Party to win, so that the interests of the Indian economy is taken into consideration. But again, the markets can change, the socio-economic and the geopolitical concerns around the globe can also impact the markets as well. So I hope I've been able to give you a good amount of analysis, a good amount of understanding as to which sectors have more influence, will be more impacted by the US elections, which sectors would not be much impacted by the US elections, how the Indian government is making sure to safeguard its interests. So there are a lot of things that are being taken into consideration when it comes to such a phenomenal and significant event such as the US election, right? Just 2 to 3 more working days for the US elections, and then the markets are going to be quite dynamic, right? So for people who love entertainment, no better place than the stock market, right? Because during that day, the prices are going to be flying from one side to the other, at least for the US indices, right? Now how much it gets impacted on the Indian economy would be less significant because the elections are happening in the US and not in India, correct? But nonetheless, the IT sector will be focused upon into what has been happening before the elections and what has been happening once the election results are out. So we did talk a lot about the different factors between the two. How did the Republican Party, their policies and their philosophies of establishing certain standards, right, would affect the Indian economy, as well as what would happen if the Republican Party, under the influence of Mr. Donald Trump, would imply on the Indian markets if he does, come back into power. We did try to understand, and based from the past data, which was mentioned over here, how the markets have reacted. We even have showcased you in terms of the IT sector, which is the most affected sector when it comes to the US elections, and what is the general consensus of it as of now. Remember, the dotted purple line is the date, right? 5th of November, as you can see over here. So everyone is crossing their fingers and is preparing, to get ready for what the market holds for us. Remember, this is the Nifty IT index. This is a general consensus as to what we did look at certain stocks as TCS and Infosys, right? All of them currently are taking a hit. Is it due to the onset of the US elections coming into place, or is it just because of the uncertainty that what the market holds? We talked about TCS, we talked about Infosys, some of the biggest heavyweights when it comes to the IT sector, when it comes to the Indian IT sector. Even this has been taking quite a fall. And we even talked about the defense sector, right? Now, whether Mrs. Harris wins or Mr. Trump wins, the general consensus for defense stocks are still, bullish, because at the end, what they would be focused on would be based on strengthening the strategic alliance between the two countries. So we do overall expect. I could not find a defense index on the Indian share market, so I'm trying to look at individual companies who are performing well. One of them is Bharat Dynamics industry, which is basically into the aerospace and defense sector, right? And there is another one called as Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. So this is again another company that falls into the aerospace and defense sector. We have a bias that the prices should be going up for these, whether Mrs. Harris wins or Mr. Trump wins, right? I hope I have been able to provide you some valuable information in terms of what the market has been taking into consideration. Remember, the markets in the English share market will be less affected, right? It's not the elections that are happening in India, because of which we are going to see massive fluctuations. But overall, certain sectors such as the IT sector, right? The pharmaceutical sector. Remember, a lot of medicines are being manufactured in both nations, USA as well as India. So, and both the consumption of their medicines occurs in both the countries, right? So, pharma companies might also have a little bit of influence on the US elections, but the main focus lies only on the Nifty IT index, right? The Nifty IT index and the companies that fall under the Nifty IT index, right? I hope I'm making it clear so that we are, having a clear bias. We showed you graphs in terms of what has happened in the past when a particular party is in power. When the Republican Party was in power, the stock Indian share market had a negative, sentiment, and when the Democratic Party was in power, the English share market, the Indian index had a positive sentiment, a bullish sentiment. So I hope people have able to connect as many dots as possible, right? Please remember the reasons we are having these discussions are to make you more aware of the current market, scenarios happening, and somehow and letting you or making you more aware of what the current most recent important events that are going to take place. So I hope everyone has got a good amount of understanding. I hope I was able to provide you with value. I hope you understood how we try to connect as many dots as possible, going through articles, then trying to understand the sectors which might perform well, or the sectors which are, influenced by the elections, certain sectors which are not influenced by the elections, going to the particular sector to analyze, okay, how is the sector performing, and trying to look at few of the individual stocks. All right, so I hope everyone had a good time. I hope people have learned something new. Well, I have also learned, right? When I'm talking to you beautiful people, even when I'm talking, even I'm doing my research, I am learning as well. So I mean, I'm thankful to all of you, because of which I'm able to even learn more information by myself, right? So I hope you all have a great evening ahead. Again, I want to wish each and everyone a very happy Diwali, right? May the festival of lights lighten up your life for the entire year, right? So make sure you have a good time with your friends, families, girlfriends, boyfriends, children, grandchildren. Make sure to attend all our live streaming sessions, right? Tomorrow the markets are still running. Tomorrow being Friday, we would be seeing a lot of implications as to how today's market closure for the month of October has started to affect, right? Tomorrow, the month of November starts. It's a fresh month, being a Friday. So again, I hope there would be, certain opportunities that might arise tomorrow as well, right? Based on certain market conditions. Hopefully, I've provided you a good amount of information. I hope you have a great evening. Happy Diwali once again, and I will see you tomorrow. Until then, take care. Namaste and bye bye.